All right, cool. All right. Welcome to the Jason Wojo podcast. I am here with Sonia Gomez. She founded Authority Brand Builder with a mission to help business owners speak more confidently so they can sell more effortlessly on stage, virtually, and in person. After building an audience of over 1 million people, producing over 300 videos, 250 podcast episodes, and reaching over 350 million worldwide with her content, Sonia realized the biggest asset to your business is your ability to communicate with confidence and clarity so you can sell effortlessly while changing the world, one product, one service, one presentation at a time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So I sell on stage a lot because I do free events. So the first question I have for you is, since you help coaches, consultants, and obviously entrepreneurs sell more on stage, do you recommend free or paid events to frame the sale better? I know what you might say, but you know what's crazy is I make more off my free events than the paid ones.
Yeah, I guess it just, it depends on your offer. There's some school of thought that says people who pay attention. There's another school of thought that says the more value you can bring up front to build trust, get people to like you, get really familiar and build their comfortability with you, then you're able to sell on the back end. So I've done both models really well. And I think it just depends on who your audience is, who are you serving, and how do they respond up front. I've done both and had, great experience and success with both models.
So when you look at an event, like an entrepreneur is hosting an event, for no matter what the niche is, are you looking for a specific ticket price to be pushing? Like, is there like this minimum KPI that you set of like, listen, like if you're going to have a free event and let's say you have 50 people there, what ticket would you want that person to be selling?
If you are, again, it depends on the venue, like whatever your physical output is and your financial output. If you're doing a live event model, it's all about the business plan, right? You have to know your number and make data-driven decisions. So if you're putting a lot of money out on the front end, let's say $5,000-$10,000 on the front end, and you want to fill the room with 50 to 150, qualified prospects, you at minimum want to be selling something for $5,000 to $10,000 to recoup your costs and really build up your bank on the back end. But if you're doing a free event and this is what I love about virtual events, and COVID really created the possibility for us to come online, maximize our profits without having that huge front end expense of bringing people into a room. I really love to sell something around the $3,000 mark. Especially if you haven't done high ticket before, that's a great place to start and build your confidence with high ticket selling one to many. And you can do that virtually. If you are doing that live in person, I really suggest aiming for that, $7,500 to $10,000 price range.
Yeah. You'll have a lot more emotional triggers that way. So I recently had an event, and you can tell me if this was a success. So I had an event, I paid $750 a day for a room that fitted about 60 people. Okay. So 60 people. I had 45 show. Okay. 45 stayed day one. Day two, 30 showed. Okay. Because they knew I was going to pitch because I framed it the first day.
Yeah.
So second day I had 30 people and I had 7 people buy, and they bought a 5,500. If I spent 3 to 4K to make 30 something thousand, do you think that that's a good ROI?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I would do that all day.
All right. The other thing is that there was one tweak that I made to mine, and I don't know if you'd use this, but this is the only pricing hack that I've used that has literally crushed every single one of my clients' conversion rates on webinars or in person. When you talk about selling a $7,000, I actually don't sell that. I don't sell 7. I actually don't sell 3,000. I don't even sell 1,000. I do weekly payments. And that crushes. And I learned this from Jason Capital. He's like my favorite mentor. We've been friends for years now. And he literally was like, dude, you can't sell people on that. If you do weekly payments, your conversion rate will go up so much more. And I've been using it ever since. And my revenue literally has doubled every single month because of weekly payments. People, for some reason, where they get thrown an amount, like let's say you're charging $8,000. Right? You get charged $8,000 and I'm like, okay, you're going to pay this up front. There's 2 things that actually happen. One, I think a lot of sales friction happens. Number 2 is they just look at $8,000. But because I would say, listen, no, forget the 8 grand, just give me $1,000 a week for 8 weeks. Not only does the conversion rate go up, two other things happen. Number one is they actually give more shits. Okay. So when they're getting charged weekly, they actually are more activated in the program. And then the second thing that happens is that you lessen chargebacks because you can't go to your credit repair company and charge back 8 transactions in a row. So you're doing two things at once. And that has been like the biggest breakthrough for me is just doing weekly payments because everybody does one monthly retainers or upfront. And then as soon as I swung weekly, it just crushes like every single day. It's freaking insane.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of people shifting to the weekly model. I've seen the monthly model work really super well. And like no commitment masterminds, for instance, James Schramko is a great example of that, where it's a lower barrier of entry, but at the end of the year, if you were sold a big package, it would be a bigger number. I really love that model. Micro commitments is something that I say, and if you can bring that value and build that value over that period of time, it's a no-brainer. I really love high impact immersion models where you can deliver in a short period of time for high ticket. And that way people are experiencing that immediate transformation and you have more stickability. But to my point that I made earlier, people who pay attention. And if they feel the pressure condense down, they can experience a quantum leap. And it's all in your teaching style and what the deliverables are of your product or program. If you don't have a product or program, really thinking about those things carefully. I love to say, spend 80% of your time on the planning, 20% on the delivery, and you'll be a lot more successful. So I love the weekly model point, or having people in shorter periods of time be committed both energetically and financially to the outcome that you're promising.
So there was two things too. Like when you get to the end of the pitch, I always use a weird number. I always say like, hey, like because of my schedule and like during the slides, like I have a good direct response background. So I know how to like hit the right infatuations and triggers for like what the slide should say. So I usually will pop up a picture of my calendar for the week of next. And I'm like, hey, like my calendar's so booked. If you want to do one-on-one, I can only take 8 people and I circle the 8 squares on the calendar. And then it makes it weird because a lot of people say 5, they say 10, they say weird stuff. And I'm like, no one's going to believe you. But as soon as you say 7, 8, 9, like people actually believe you. And then, I don't know how you feel about like the activation point when you talk about people want this quick like feeling of dopamine of like they're getting a result already. There's two things that I always did on the second days of my events where I would say, hey, listen, like these 8 people who buy, like I'll take you to dinner tonight and I'll shoot you a testimonial video. And that always got people to convert. So as soon as they felt like they had social proof to help convert the offer better, and they were like, all right, like we're gonna go to dinner, it's paid by him, whatever, like we'll go hang out with him for a couple more hours. And like those things always would push people. I don't know what your advice is for people who are like in a room, right? And they do the pitch, but they don't see a lot of hands being raised. Is there like some type of infatuation that you've used that's worked really well to get people to be like, all right, shit, like now I might consider this?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways that you're communicating, whether you're in a virtual audience or live and in person. People are watching what you do, they're listening to what you say. There's all of your senses have to be activated, right? So I use a lot of nonverbal communication to NLP and hypnosis, which very much has to do with the gestures, the way you're setting up the stage, the way you're positioning your product, the way you're talking about the past. All of these different things happen on stage with subliminal communication or nonverbal communication with your audience. There's ways to engage their physiology when you ask them a question, asking them to raise their hand, putting their hand over their heart. When they're responding to you, and you create a mirroring with your audience where they're mimicking the motions that you're making. And now you have, a repeat sort of relationship with your audience. The most important thing that you have to know as a speaker is you have to keep your audience engaged. And one of my mentors and dear friends talks about a term, edutainment. So many people who know so much and want to get on stage and sell their product and share their program and all the things tend to overteach. So when they go to the sell, there's nothing there. They feel like there's nothing left to give, or there's the audience feels like they got everything that they needed to go. share a little bit and sell a lot.
So that's why, like, whenever I do slides for my events, I don't actually like, because I teach a lot about advertising. I'll never share my screen and actually go into Facebook ads, because if I do, I've given up too much.
Yeah.
So it's
There's
like,
also the other thing, and one of the things I want to ask you about, because it sounds like you're heavily involved with live events. I've checked out your social media. I really appreciate the way that you position things and how each bucket kind of spills into the next. So the same thing happens in the stage, or let's use a date or a romantic encounter as an example, right? When you enter into that, you're not going to throw up and be like, well, in 12 months, I see myself married and having a baby, and I want to have a shared bank account. That's not what happens on the first date. On the first date, you're really building the intrigue, the interest, finding out whether or not you're interested in spending any more time or investing any more money, on this person. And for me, time is the one thing that you can't get back. You can get money over and over and over again, but you can never get your time back. So that's the first consideration, is when I'm looking at a client, or when a client is considering me, I have to put deep consideration into the fact that they are investing their precious time into learning something with me. And so I want to over deliver on that promise. When you go on to stage, you have a carefully crafted presentation. So you're not surprised by the content that you're going to share. You're not surprised by the pitch you're going to give, and you can focus on the value that you're delivering to your audience, which releases the barrier to everybody else. Everyone comes into a space, whether they paid to get there or not, they're thinking in their mind, oh, he's going to try and sell me something. The minute that you can diminish that barrier in between you and the audience, the easier it's going to be for you to create a pitch. If you have a carefully crafted presentation, so you know what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, and to build yourself up to the pitch, things get a lot less stressful and a lot easier, and frankly, a lot more fun. And when you get to just focus on the content and the value that you're delivering to your audience. A lot of speakers try to go on stage, wing it, build their presentation the night before, don't really put a lot of thought or time or effort into it. Their ego and their pride gets in the way of being prepared. And things end up flopping. They lose the attention of their audience. They don't convert the way that they thought they were going to. Their partners or event planners get upset with them, and it's just a ripple effect to be really bad. The more prepared you can be, the better, the more profitable you can be.
Yeah, like we have like a bunch of SOPs around the events and like how we kind of correlate it. The other thing was like when the thing that I always do on both days is I like, whenever I bring up an analogy or I go over a concept or whatever strategy or whatever question someone brings me, the biggest thing that I've always done is I get them away from an emotional decision. So the thing that I would always preach in my events was like, numbers don't lie, people do. And whenever people would ask me questions, I wouldn't actually tell them the answer. I would just bring it back to numbers. I'd be like, hey, listen, like, how many leads are you getting a day? What's your closing rate? If you got 8 leads a day, how many buyers would you get? Blah, 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 blah. And I break it down to them to where they're like, damn, maybe it's just numbers. So then when I'm making the pitch, I bring up that same quote and I revert back to everything that I've obviously done. And then I can bring back examples from day one that got them to make this kind of connection in their head. Because I think a lot of people now than ever with the recession here and all this stuff is like, a lot of people are making massively emotional choices. And not a lot of people just take a step back and realize the numbers. And I think that that's because it's boring, right? When we were kids, we hated math, or some of us did. I personally didn't, but like some people did not like that in school. And we associate that with the boring things in the business that we don't want to do. So when you talk about like going up on stage and not being prepared, if you don't have some type of KPI set for yourself, it's kind of hard to run a successful event, because now in our heads, me and Tiffany, my CEO, we can say, all right, we have 38 people in the room. We got to get 9. We got to get 10. Because if 10 by 5, like a 5K, like one of the packages was like 55.49 paid weekly, that's 50K. But if I get 7 at the lower price point and not the middle, then I'm making 30. So it's like, what do we have to push more? And then it's just a lot of number-based decisions. And what's funny?
Data-driven decision making is a mature way to enter into business. And I had to use this. as a gauge when I was even deciding what kind of clientele I was going to be working with. Because here's the thing about being in business, guys, and I imagine that the majority of your audience is already in a place where they're measuring their metrics and making data-driven decisions. You know, just going through your content on YouTube, which I love, by the way. Your YouTube shorts are fire. You know, this super funny. I love like showcasing personality in this, and I'll talk more about the importance of that here in a moment. But when you are crafting your offer and designing an event, it's not really an event, it's an experience that you're providing, a delivery method for value exchange and building the law of reciprocity. And this is somewhat woo-woo, but it's right in alignment with what you were just talking about. A lot of people make emotionally driven decisions because they're in an emotional place. They're either panicking, they're feeling the financial pressure, they need something to work, and they're following pressure versus passion. And I really like to step outside of that and not operate from a place of desperation, but really operate from a place of like, where can I deliver the most value and help people see the biggest transformation? And so I had to kind of adjust my language, adjust my offer, adjust my price points to attract and serve the type of clientele that's going to best benefit from the offer that I have to share with them. And that's very similar to you. There is something to take into consideration. Not everybody's offer is going to be metric driven, even though the metrics are important to understand. When they are making an offer, they may be, if it's a personal development offer, a retreat offer, a transformational offer, that's going to be different than somebody who's trying to build their business with advertising, or they're measuring two different KPIs, and they're also going to be confronted with different objections in the selling process. So in a personal development offer, for instance, you're going to have to know how to overcome in your presentation and in your marketing the emotional objections, like, am I good enough? Can I do this? Do I have what it takes? So on and so forth. Whereas somebody who's looking at investing in a business building strategy, email marketing, any content marketing, any of this stuff, they're going to be thinking about how quickly can I put in $1 and get 2 out. And
Yep.
that's important that's why crafting your presentation, really understanding your offer and making that message to market match is so important, especially in a live event series, because you have more time. Anybody can fool somebody in a short video, but once you get into a live event space, if you don't have those really clear communication points to show that you know what you're talking about and that you're there to bring incredible value to that audience and solve real problems in real time, you're going to lose the sale before you even make it.
Yeah. So the other thing is, like, this happened to me, and this is kind of funny. I was going up to sell before lunch on the last day. And the crazy part is that when I always used to sell at the end, like, it would make people easier to get up and leave afterwards. They didn't think about it a second time. So the second day at 5 o'clock, I would sell. And then if no one bought, they would just leave because the event's over.
Mm-hmm.
But I tried selling before lunch and my slides didn't work. Like, I went up and I put the HDMI cord in and the projector overheated. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me right now. This is a joke. This can't be real. So the event before it, I used the same slides, but this event, I didn't actually have slides. Instead, I was like, I just went right to it. I was like, all right, well, this is kind of embarrassing. Does anybody here want to work more one-on-one close? Like, raise your hand. And instead, I was like, okay, come to the front of the room. And that's how I did it instead. So before lunch, I sold that way, where I put them all in a circle. I gave them the paper and I explained them the offer. I know that doesn't work going rogue, but like, there were people who actually got up and left. And I never actually experienced that before. I don't know what your viewpoint is on that, but there were people who left, like, and didn't come back after lunch when I was trying to pitch. Like, they knew and they just like got their backpacks and left. And I'm like, what is the point of you coming here and then you're just going to leave? Like, you don't have to buy. And I think it's just the fact of the matter that people are afraid to be sold to, and they want all these results, but then they don't, like, the fact that they can't sell, they don't want to be sold too. But then they expect people to buy their stuff, but they can't buy other people's stuff. And it's just like, it's just weird to me. So do you have any advice for people who are going in for the pitch and they see people who pack up and leave? Because I feel like you've seen that before.
Yeah, I have seen it before. Not too much because, in my experience, we really carefully craft the environment in which people are in, and we set things up to for that time, and we let people know what's coming, but not just what's coming, but what's coming after the thing that's coming. And so there's a series of pre-frames that happen in there, and there's a whole science to crafting the perfect live event, whether it's virtual or in person, so that you don't get the people that are leaving. However, if there is a situation where you feel like you're leading up to the pitch, you're checking the wind, you're bringing it up to bat, and you start to see people teetering out, or like they're kind of changing their body language. Like,
Yeah, I definitely could see that.
Nothing to see
Like
here.
closing their laptop.
Yeah, they're closing their laptop. They're checking, they're kind of starting to check their phone a little bit here, and you can tell that the energy in the room is shifting, and you're like, oh fuck, this is a little awkward. Nothing worse than awkward selling, right?
Yeah.
But here's the deal. In any point of your business, especially when you're selling, you have to be as interested in the person that you're selling to as they are in the person that they're buying from. And I'll explain what I mean by that. There are going to be butts and seats, and then there's going to be hearts and seats. Quantity is not always quality. And my focus and my attention goes to serving the masses. But really, when it comes down to it, I already know that the 7 to 10 people that I need and want to create that closer client relationship with are going to be attracted to me. And that's where my focus and my attention is. If you start, and it's right back to the ego, if you start sweating bullets over the people that are turning their back to you, those aren't the client. Here's the biggest secret no one talks about. Those aren't the clients you want to serve. That's not the money you want to collect. Those are going to be the ones that try and charge you back. Those are going to be the ones that complain about your services. Those are going to be the ones that say that it didn't work for them. See, another thing I invested in that didn't work for me and my business. That's not you. That's not who you're there to serve. You're there to serve the hungry crowd, the people who resonate with the things that you're sharing, the people who truly are prepared to take advantage of the offer that you're offering at that moment. If you're focusing your attention on the few that are leaving, then you're not serving the many who are staying with you. And so that's just an ego shift that, it's difficult to not feel like your pride is going to be challenged when you see people turning their back and walking away. But really, it's just the universe doing you a favor, filtering out. Like if you use a water filter, if you use, something like that, they're just filtering out the minerals that aren't going to serve your body.
Yeah. So that's the thing too, is like when I get to the pre-framing, I do something really mean at the end. So like when I'm about to pitch, I'll ask people if they want to do this, because I don't hand them a paper until I talk first, because if I hand them a paper too soon, they just look at the price. So I'll go into some infatuations, then I'll have them raise their hand. Then I have Tiffany go hand them a paper. And then what I'll do is I'll I'll go over a next piece. And then after the next piece, then I say, hey, listen, if you don't have at least X amount and you don't want to do this, I just need you to get up and leave the room and wait outside, because I'm going to talk to real entrepreneurs in here while you're outside. And I say that and people get so offended, but it works, because then they feel like they want to stay. Because then it's like this shift of like, am I a real entrepreneur? Because I go over the whole system, like the whole system that I talk about the first day is like how people who are an entrepreneur are not really an entrepreneur. We go from learner to freelancer, then to entrepreneur, then to business owner, then to CEO, and then to leader. There's all these different phases that people go through. And I basically just make them feel like they're not an entrepreneur by like not raising their hand or not
You
saying.
challenge their ego. It's ego selling.
Oh,
So
hell
you
yeah.
challenge
I
their
think it's
ego.
funny. But like
And
after watching some of my content, you'll know that I'm very like aggressive. I'll say shit that's very outlandish. It's just funny. It's just I think that it does challenge people, but it makes them realize like the fact that I could do it in person, because years ago, I'm pretty young. I'm 25, but when I was in high school, right? When I was in high school, people all the time would always say like, you would never say that to my face. And that's a thing for my generation. So my crowd and my demographic are like younger business owners below 35, most of them. So for us, we were in high school and you had to pick a fight with somebody. It was, you won't say it to their face, right? Like you won't go up to him and say that. Well, now that I'm in the room and they can resonate with that and I'm in their face telling them that they're not this, no one's going to take a swing at me. Nobody. And because they're not going to take a swing, they decide to be like, damn, I think I might have to buy this. And it's like, it's just this entertaining thing for me. Like I like taking people from like this, like very sheltered, sheltered plus ego. Because some people have silent egos where if you trigger them a certain way, now they have this ego. And I like taking people from that little sheltered position to like maybe kind of being a little vulnerable and opening up and just like kind of dropping that, because they can listen. When you have an ego, it's very hard to listen. Like people don't listen if they have an ego. They'll retain, but then they twist, or they retain, deflect. And it's like, it's just very entertaining to me. I like how the human psyche works. And out of anything that I do at events or selling in general, I like taking people from where they think they're going to have leverage to just completely dropping this wall. And that's been the most entertaining thing for me. That's why sometimes I'll still take sales calls. I think it's fun. Getting people from like, oh, that's really expensive, to then taking out their credit card. I think it's so interesting. I don't know. It's just so fascinating to me. I don't know, but I figure I share that.
Yeah, I think it's good. I'll never forget one of my first experiences in selling. I was kind of completely by accident. I was working for the Paul Mitchell organization, and my whole existence in that company was to convert regular everyday salons into a Paul Mitchell culture salon. And it was a $25,000 transformation and, the kind of beginning package situation. And I would go in and I would talk to these salon owners. And let me tell you, there's no better ego than one that you find in the beauty industry. And so you'd walk in and you talk to them about the things that could be better in their business and blah, 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 so on and so forth. And I started to get confronted by people's egos, their ideas of what, who they are, what they have, what they should have. And the minute that they start to get challenged, they get defensive. However, if you're able to break past the things, the things and the people that they have not yet become, and show them a clear path to how they can become who they want to be and have what they want to have in a shorter period of time using what you called metrics or data, then it's a lot easier to break past those barriers. Creating a challenge or simulating the FOMO, fear of missing out. People will stay in the room when you invite them to leave just because they don't want to miss out on what you have to say next. They'll think to themselves, well, I'm good enough. I can. And so they will. And a portion of those people will end up converting into your offer. And I think that that's a great strategy and tactic. Again, it's all based off of your demographic. Others will want something or need something different from their sales experience. When you are an event host and you're an entrepreneur and you're selling a product or service, it's your job to know your audience, know your offer, and have a strategy or a carefully crafted presentation that delivers that value so you can make that offer. Based off of who your audience is, you can challenge their ego, hit their emotional triggers, or, I create invitations so that there's non-confrontational selling happening, and I edutain them. I love to do a Pied Piper close where, I bring everybody to the back of the room, table rushes, I really enjoy that type of selling, and then offering incentivized, referrals and all these different tactics and strategies where I can get 70% of my room to rush me at the back of the table and easily closing between 40 to 60%, depending on the audience that I'm speaking to. If it's my own audience, we're closing 70% all day. So I think that it's, the deeper the connection you can create, the easier it will be for you to know like what strategy to use when you're closing. But for, for me, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
It's just who are you and who is your audience and what's going to create that connection at that pitch point.
I love it. So just to conclude, for the last question, because this has been massively valuable for me and probably the viewers, is what are the 3 biggest things that helped you with helping people close more in person, like at the end of the pitch? Like, what are 3 things that if anybody was to take would help them out tremendously?
Yeah, so 3 things that will help you get the best result when you're getting ready to pitch from stage, whether it's your first time or you're trying to increase the conversions when selling to your audience. Number 1 would be having a carefully crafted presentation. Like I said, being prepared is the number 1 challenge for entrepreneurs. There's too much on our plates. We save things till the very last minute, and we think we know our content so well that we can just jump up there and wing it. Well, in fact, the most successful entrepreneurs are scientifically crafting the experience that you're going to have, from the music that they play when you walk into a room to the type of MC that they're using and the messaging that they're sharing with you, beginning, middle, and end of each day, the way that they're building up the event all the way through. So your preparedness and understanding how to create that environment so that you can, in fact, successfully share a product or program at the end is number 1. And the way that we work together is to really go through who's your audience, what's your offer, what are the key deliverables, and how can we showcase that through the live experience or virtual experience that you're creating. And this can be condensed down into a 90-minute online workshop or a 3-day sales event. Whatever your structure is, that can, those are kind of the primary goals, is to create that buildup and give people a taste of what your product or program is going to be. The second thing is nonverbal communication. How are you communicating with your body language, with and engaging the physiology of your audience? There's a huge difference between an audience that is present and having a present audience. So somebody who is present with you is engaged, they're looking, there's no reason for them to be on their electronics or talking to the person next to them. They're fully engaged, and there's a reciprocal relationship happening between the stage presenter and the person that's in the audience. That is so important to really understand the mechanics of speaking outside of the script or presentation that you're using to deliver content. You really have to be able to create that physical and emotional connection to the content that you're delivering. And then finally is, I would say, a lot of the work that I do and the biggest difference that we make is with people who are not seeing the conversions and are really wanting to increase the conversions in their audience. And a lot of that has to do with their own confidence, their own belief system. And I've worked with a lot of people just like you. As a matter of fact, the majority of my testimonials and client relationships come from men who are successful internet marketers. They've done incredible numbers through email marketing or, Facebook ads or whatever it is that they're doing that keeps them behind the scenes, but they want to scale their business with a high ticket offer, and they're ready to deliver it on stage in a virtual or live event. And a lot of that work that we do is that transition from being behind the scenes to taking that leadership position. When you go from being a CEO to being a leader, and what kind of personal transformation you have to go through in order to assume a position of leadership, where you're invoking your courage, where you're leveraging your knowledge, your experience, and are now ready to increase not only your income, but your impact. And that is the type of client that I love to work with. People like you who are ready to scale their business to hit add a couple more zeros to their revenue, and are, really wanting to increase their impact along with their income. that's where I really shine. I'll never forget working with a young man by the name of Igor Kaifetz, who at the time was the #1 email marketer for BizOp opportunities online. And he was doing multiple 6 figures a month, but low ticket offers and affiliate offers was the primary bread and butter for his business. And when we started to work together, he had his first opportunity to speak on stage, didn't have a product or program he was going to sell. He was just going to go on stage to deliver a 45-minute presentation. Well, I reviewed his presentation. We in 2 hours, were able to craft an offer at a $50,000 price point. He was the 4th speaker on stage the next day. And, I just said to him, hey, you know what? I'm going to come there and stand in the back of the room just to be his emotional support for you. And speaker -- got up, taught, they tried to sell, nobody bought. The room had about 75 people in it. Second speaker got up, pitched, did their whole thing, 45-minute presentation, made their pitch, nobody got up. Third speaker, same thing happened. Now Igor is sweating. He's pulling on his collar. He's nervous. He's looking for every way to get out of the presentation. We get him up on stage. I'm listening to him. He has his slides. We build in prompts on each slide so he knows exactly what to go into next. Where I'm in the background, I'm showing him all of the physical gestures to engage people's physiologies. We're getting people to answer us. We're doing the call and return, the whole thing on the stage. He goes in to make his pitch, his first time ever speaking. Goes in to make his pitch. It's a $50,000 offer. And those of you who are ready to get started, go ahead and follow me to the back of the room. 9 people, half the room stood up, and 9 people ended up putting down their credit card for $50,000.
That's dope.
So in a 45-minute, or let's say a 90-minute presentation on the long end, right? Usually it's 45 to 60 minutes. But in that period of time, you're able to deliver the value and completely transform your business. That's some people's annual salary. That's some people's decade salary. Yeah. Imagine making as much as you do in 1 year in 1 day.
Yeah.
What kind of difference can that make for you in your business? It's transformational. And so Igor came off shaking, trembling, so excited.
Yeah, that was like my first time. I was like shaking when I was about to pitch. I had the paper in my hand and my hands were sweating to the point where the fucking paper got all wet.
And so that's, that's the biggest transformation and part of the work that I love the most. I mean, you can go to anybody to create you a script or design you a beautiful presentation or any of the other elements that contribute to your success. But that mind shift, when you go from running your business to leading your community, stepping into your power, really taking leadership position to increase your impact. Imagine how much transformation Igor is able to create now when he has a $500,000 infusion into his business in 90 minutes. Yeah. It's incredible. And so for those of you guys who are, just getting started in business or just scaling your business or are ready to take that quantum leap from CEO, business owner, into an impact-driven leader for your community, considering selling one-to-many, having an irresistible offer that you can deliver to a hungry audience, whether it's your own or somebody else's, making that shift in your mindset to believe that you can impact more people in less time is part of the work that I love the most. And really giving people the tools and the tactics that they need to leverage that opportunity and get the absolute most out of it. Yeah. So that's those are the things that I would suggest. I love it.
Yeah, no, that was great. I appreciate all the value you brought. Right now, do you recommend, because the presentation is a reflection of the offer. Mm-hmm. So if it's offer, a delivery system. Yeah. So I like the part that you talked about how if it doesn't resonate with the audience, you don't really hone on that because it's not about the quantity over quality. And that's the thing that I always had to wean out was we would get people who just randomly show up because it's free, but they're not as serious. So it's just it's tough because I've tried charging for an event and I charged $197. And I had 12 people show and only one person bought an 8K. And I was like, what the hell? And that was like my second event. And I've had like, 9 to 10 since, but I just get better and better at it with just like the repetition. But I appreciate all the value that you brought today. So where can they follow you right now?
Yeah. So if you go to authoritybrandbuilder.com, it'll bring you right into my private Facebook group. And that's where we're delivering a lot of value right now. And it's a ton of free value. I'm of the belief system, and I've reached a place in my career where I understand that income is a direct result of the impact that you're bringing into your audience or into your market. And I learned this over time, in building my own audience. I went into one of the most challenging, this will just be the final story here. Do we have time to
Yeah,
have
of course. Yeah, yeah.
story? Okay. So, 5 years ago, I entered into the content space in a niche market that not everybody was talking about. It happened to be cannabis. And if you're in the cannabis or CBD industry, you can hiccup the wrong way or sneeze the wrong way in a video and get shadow banned. It's one of the most challenging industries to market in the entire world. Well, one of the things that I learned from my mentor, Mike Koenigs, was if you own the race course, you'll never go hungry. And so I had to figure out how to capture the attention of the people that I wanted to serve, how to connect authentically with them through storytelling, and ultimately how to convert them into an offer, no matter what my product or price point was. And so all I did was drive content and build community for a long time before I ever built an offer. And I started to survey that audience. I started to survey them and ask them, what do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you paying for? The more metrics I got back, and you'll love this, the more metrics I got back, the more response I got back, the easier it was for me to craft my offer. And so I want you guys to take this away. Some of you who are just getting started in business are thinking to themselves, I can't get started because I don't have X. I don't have a website. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have a audience. I don't have, right? You're probably not the right person for us to be working with, because you have to work with the mindset that you can have any one of those things at the drop of a dime. Come into my Facebook group, Authority Brand Builder, and I'll be able to show you how to make that quantum leap. The second thing that I'm learning is you can build an audience, pay all day, hire Jason right now, and you'll be able to have yourself an audience. You'll be able to reach more people. It's all about how much money you have. However, no matter if you pay to play or are building organically, if it's your audience or somebody else's, if you don't have a compelling story to tell, you won't have an offer to sell or anybody who cares to buy it. So really knowing how to tell your story, and more importantly, what story to tell, so that it builds up and leads you to that, I created this program because. If you don't have that build up in your way that you tell your story, you're not going to have a connection with your audience, and they'll start to fizzle out no matter how much money you paid to get them there. And then finally is having that carefully crafted offer. Now, where to get your audience and how to capture their attention, how to create that story so you're building that connection, and ultimately how to craft and deliver your pitch so that you're converting more audiences, whether you're speaking on somebody else's podcast or building an audience of your own. Those are the things we cover in Authority Brand Builder. And so I'm super excited to bring you on there. And I like to keep things really super simple, which is why I deliver most of my content right on Facebook. So check me out at authoritybrandbuilder.com, and I'll be excited to see you guys there.
Yeah, of course. Well, I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the show, and I will connect with you soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Jason.
All right.
Thanks for having me. Take
Yep.
care,
Have a
guys.
good one.